Dato' Anwar Fazal, Chairman Think City. Guest of honor, Dato' Judy Ching Hopkins, my Raffles Hall veteran, relatives, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply honored by your presence today at the launch of my book, The Penang House and the Straits Architect. Thank you for sharing this very special occasion with me. This volume, which traces the work of half a dozen of Penang's leading architects, who are European, is the product of some 30 years research. I am indebted to so many people who have contributed to my research in one way or another. In particular, I want to pay tribute to the late Tunku Abdul Rahman, who helped facilitate my research both here and abroad. Tunku was the first to encourage me and pave the way for research, starting from the archives of the municipality, Penang, and continue on to Britain. There, I met with some living architects and engineers, collected their oral history. I'm grateful to my late brother, Jon Lim Sun Hock, and indeed to my wife, Doreen, whose unfailing support and sacrifice has enabled me to write this book. I might have even paraphrased a little that much sacrifice, changes in our lifestyle occurred since 1982. And it seemed that this work would never end. But also, I want to thank my publisher, Arica Books, their staff and associates, for the incredible support given in the production of this book. Since my childhood days, I have been fascinated with the Penang House. After being inspired to become an architect by my late uncle, Hian Chu Sian, and a family friend, Kinton Lu, I went on to study architecture in Melbourne. Then the interest in the Penang House gathered. I see these houses as a symbolic form of placemaking, one that transcends national and cultural boundaries. The Penang House is a potent symbol of colonial era cultural exchanges and the negotiation of migrant identities. The evolution of the Penang House traces the development of a particular Malayan identity. These buildings crystallizes our memories and identity. While I taught at the NUS, National University, Singapore, I developed a course on history of architecture of the Straits region. Penang became the potent symbol for my students. And they believe that it is in Penang that is most unique and indeed the birthplace of early 20th century architecture. That reputation is well deserved. Why is the Penang House so special? Even when I compare to the great house of Singapore and Malacca, it seems to me that in both geographical and cultural terms, Penang stood apart from the rest of the Straits settlement. She is unique because of her historic link with India, Burma, and South Thailand, cultural ties which existed even decades before Singapore was founded. The British architects who came here found Penang a romantic, exotic, and salubrious island with rugged natural beauty. On this rich canvas, they painted their ornate architectural statements. Indeed, Penang became their fertile ground for their experimentation. In this book, I identify that the Penang house constitutes of three typologies, namely the bungalow, the villa, and the castle mansion. In the local patois, they are the Ang Mo Lao and the Puka Lao. I trace the development of the house form from the early colonial era, built by engineers, where their architectural statements were seen in 19th century Northern Road. They were literally adaptu, but with a Georgian resonance. That period that is covered in this book importantly mark the turning point of the architectural practice, the transition of the colonial elite from an engineering fraternity to a civil engineering fraternity, the sibling rivalry with the architects, who must show that they are the boss, not the engineers. Okay. The Penang house was shaped by the early century by a number of European architects, and they are Henry Alfred Newbroda, David MacLeod Craig, James Stark with John McNeill, Boucher, and lastly, Joseph Charles Miller. They are architects affiliated with the Institute of British Architects, and their reputation and prestige were unquestionable. And when they were the architects at the Seafood, the Chinese clients, the Indian clients, indeed of all races, and the Malay royals from Kedah, we had no say. They decided what your house ought to look like. And the truth is, the plan do not necessarily correspond to the lifestyle required. But nevertheless, it's well celebrated, it's most charming. So they experimented with various forms, symmetry, asymmetry, light and shade, mesh, porosity, cross-ventilation, contributing to the golden age of architecture in the 1920s. Their scholarship brought in contact with local building traditions, conventions in the tropical house. Things like the Malay house were very porous, open to cross-ventilation. And these traditions helped lighten the European academicism. Vernacular ideas of porosity, cross-ventilation, and shade were adapted to make these houses fit for the tropical climate. These architects were also significant because they fostered an oral local tradition. Vernacular architects, as they were called during the turn of the 20th century, worked in European firms and went on to moonlight the practice. Lim Su Loon and Chu Eng Yam served in the office of Newbroda, but at night they were designing houses, for wealthy Chinese businessmen and Indian businessmen and Malay royals. It's just incredible how very cunning we are behind the curtain, as it is. It is my desire in this book that will foster appreciation of this important legacy, both the Europeans as celebrated in this volume 1, and one that is not too far to come, the rise of the Malaysian architects. Penang is part of the World Heritage Site, and I pray that the people of Penang, including architects and developers, will recognize their responsibility in preserving this legacy for future generations, even as we move forward. I also like to take this opportunity to highlight the Herculean efforts of the Penang Heritage Trust, which has been fighting to protect buildings for decades. Sadly, many of these buildings noted in this book have been demolished, and many more remain threatened. I urge Penang guides, both here and abroad, Anyone interested to become a member of the Penang Heritage Trust or make a tax-exempt donation. In doing so, you can help protect and further our rich Penang legacy. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. And now, in closing, I would like to introduce the Raffles Hall Brotherhood. Now, this is not so much about celebrating a memory, but I am very indebted to the support of the students of the National University of Singapore. We lived in Raffles Hostel together. And in those days, when I was the resident fellow, I had to tolerate or close my eyes in many things. Many probably unspeakable things. But they taught me more than I could teach them. Indeed, the only thing I could teach them was choir. We sang from Baroque to classical to Russian and the vernacular. Well, today they have come from different parts, KL, E&O, rallied the Malay Peninsula to say, look, let's have the Raffles Hall spirit. You know, our voice may croak a little. I found myself, you know, when you're past 70, you know, to give up and still sing. We wish to render two songs. The titles are You Raise Me Up and I Believe. And the reason is this: You Raise Me Up and I Believe embodies my struggle. It embodies my struggle to find meaning in architecture and to write a book about architecture. It took years. So please allow us to share a little memory on those glorious days of the early 1970s. We are all past 60, but it's good to look at ourselves. That's the choir of Raffles Hall. And in fact, this became the genesis of the university choir, incorporating use of college girls. We had a great time. You know, and I am promised that we won't bore you with too many of these photos, and I could stop them whenever it seemed appropriate. But it is indeed one of those severe madness, you know, that we had those days. But I think it has kindled our heart, and these wonderful graduates who are now senior lawyers and of all walks of life have come together. A few thought that they should sing with that spirit, and I hope that we don't make too much exhibition, but just to say thank you and to entertain you a little this evening. And I thank you.